Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling a pretty massive topic, Africa.
Oh, yeah, we've got a lot to cover. History, geography, culture.
The whole shebang. We're talking about a continent that's been around for, well, kind of forever, right?
You could say that. Actually, most paleoanthropologists consider Africa the oldest inhabited territory on Earth.
So we're talking about where humans, actually originated.
Exactly. We've all heard that phrase, cradle of humankind, and it's not just a catchy slogan.
Okay, so why are scientists so sure about this whole Africa as the origin thing? What's the evidence?
Well, for starters, there's the fossil record. Discoveries like Lucy and Australopithecus afarensis skeleton dating back millions of years. Those kinds of finds really solidify Africa's place as the starting point for our species.
Millions of years. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. So has Africa always looked the way it does now?
No way. It's gone through some pretty dramatic transformations over time. Think about the Sahara Desert, for example.
Okay, yeah, the Sahara. Vast, dry, scorching hot. Pretty much what comes to mind when you say desert.
Right, but imagine this. 10,000 years ago, it wasn't a desert at all. Rock art paintings from that time actually depict a lush, green Sahara, like full-on savanna with rivers and lakes, giraffes, elephants, the whole 9 yards.
Wait, seriously, a green Sahara, what happened? Some kind of massive natural disaster.
Not quite a disaster, but a huge shift nonetheless. It was climate change, happening gradually over thousands of years.
So as the Sahara dried up, what happened to the people living there?
Well, they had to adapt, right? They migrated, seeking out more hospitable environments, and that led to all sorts of cultural exchanges and new ways of life developing.
So even way back then, change and adaptation were key to survival in Africa. And speaking of change, this kind of sets the stage for all those incredible ancient civilizations, right?
You got it. When we think ancient Africa, Egypt usually steals the show.
Yeah, you can't talk about Africa without mentioning those pyramids, right? But I guess even Egypt didn't just appear out of thin air.
Nope, not at all. They emerged from the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, establishing themselves along the Nile. And those pyramids, those weren't built overnight either.
Yeah, I bet.
We're talking a level of engineering, math, astronomy that still blows our minds today.
Seriously, it's like every time you think you understand how advanced they were, you learn something even more mind-blowing.
Exactly. And, Egypt wasn't the only ancient civilization making waves in Africa.
Oh, right. There were a bunch of others. I remember learning a little bit about them in school, but it all gets kind of jumbled together after a while.
Well, there's the Kingdom of Kerma, south of Egypt, a powerful Nubian civilization that held a big chunk of territory along the Nile. They weren't messing around.
Wow, okay. Anyone else?
The Land of Punt. Bit of a mystery, that one. Known mostly from their trade with the Egyptians, they supplied all sorts of exotic goods.
Sounds intriguing.
And then you've got the Kingdom of Aksum, over in the Horn of Africa. Known for their amazing architecture and their influence across the Red Sea, each of these civilizations added its own unique spice to Africa's past.
Okay, so we've got Egypt, Kerma, Punt, Aksum. It's already a lot to keep track of. But I'm guessing all this was happening while other empires were, trying to muscle their way in.
Oh, absolutely. One big player was Carthage, a maritime empire based in North Africa.
Right, Carthage. They controlled a lot of the Mediterranean trade, didn't they? And then didn't they go up against the Romans?
They sure did in the Punic Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say it didn't end well for Carthage.
Yeah, the Romans tended to win those kinds of things, didn't they?
They had a knack for it. That victory gave them a lot of control over North Africa, led to Romanization of the region, and new kingdoms popping up like Numidia and Mauritania. You can still see the Roman influence if you travel there today.
Wow, it's amazing to think about how these ancient empires shaped the continent. It's like layers upon layers of history. But I'm wondering, amidst all these big names, were there smaller, maybe lesser-known kingdoms doing their own thing?
Definitely. That's part of what makes Africa so fascinating to explore. For example, deep in the forests of West Africa, you had the Nok culture.
The No culture. Rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
They're known for their incredible terracotta sculptures, really advanced stuff, showing a high level of artistic skill and knowledge of metalworking. It gives us a peek into a civilization that was forging its own path centuries ago.
See, that's what I love about these deep dives. You discover these hidden stories,
Yeah.
the ones that don't always make it into the textbooks.
Exactly. There's always more to uncover. And in West Africa, there's another kingdom I have to tell you about. The Ghana Empire.
Okay, lay it on me.
They were a major power, controlling trade routes across the Sahara. Their wealth came from gold and salt, much like some of those northern empires.
Makes sense. Control the trade, control the wealth.
Right. But what's really unique about the Ghana Empire are their traditions. Legend has it that they believed their founding was all thanks to a serpent deity named Bida.
A serpent deity. Okay, now that's just cool.
It shows how deeply spirituality was interwoven into these early African societies.
It's like they saw the divine in everything around them. So we've got the artistic Nok culture and the wealthy serpent-worshipping Ghana Empire.
Yeah.
Am I sensing a pattern here? It seems like there's just so much more to Africa than the names everyone knows.
You're absolutely right. Africa's story is full of vibrant, independent kingdoms that deserve just as much attention. Their stories, traditions, accomplishments, they all add to the rich tapestry of the continent's history.
You know, it's so easy to get caught up in the big narratives, the empires and conquests, but it's these smaller stories that really make the past come alive.
I agree. And speaking of shaking things up, we have to talk about the Bantu expansion. This was a massive migration that played a huge role in shaping the people and cultures of Africa.
The Bantu expansion. I vaguely remember learning about it. Can you remind me what it was all about?
So the Bantu people, originally from Central Africa, spread out across huge swaths of sub-Saharan Africa over centuries. They brought their language, culture, agricultural practices with them.
So they weren't just moving, they were transforming the places they settled.
Yeah.
What happened to the people who were already living in those areas?
It was a mixed bag. Sometimes there was peaceful assimilation, sometimes displacement, and, yeah, sometimes conflict.
I can imagine so much change happening all at once.
Exactly. For example, the Khoisan people, the indigenous inhabitants of southern Africa, were significantly impacted by the Bantu migration. Their territories shrank, and many were absorbed into Bantu societies, creating a really complex mix of cultures and traditions.
It's incredible to think about the ripple effects of one migration happening over centuries. It really highlights just how dynamic and ever-evolving Africa's history has been.
And we're only just scratching the surface. There's so much more to dig into.
Well, let's keep digging. What's next on our journey through Africa's past?
Let's fast forward a bit and delve into the medieval and early modern periods. What's really amazing about this era is the sheer diversity of pre-colonial Africa. We're not talking about a single unified entity. We're talking about a mind-blowing 10,000 different states and political systems.
Wait, 10,000? Seriously? That's like more than I could even fathom.
It's a lot, right? We're talking about everything from small, family-based hunter-gatherer groups like the San People to large, centralized kingdoms.
So a real mix of everything.
Exactly. And you had some kingdoms like the Akan people in West Africa who developed really sophisticated city-states. Others, like the Kingdom of Nri in modern-day Nigeria, became known for their technological prowess.
Hold on. Technological prowess in medieval Africa. Tell me more about that.
Well, the Kingdom of Nri, for instance, was incredibly skilled in bronze casting. Like, their techniques were so advanced, they even surpassed what Europeans were capable of at the time. These weren't just beautiful objects. They were a sign of a deep understanding of metallurgy and craftsmanship.
Wow, that really challenges the way we tend to think about history. You know, it's like innovation was happening everywhere, not just in the places we usually hear about. Africa's story is one of innovation, resilience, creativity. But sadly, there are also those darker chapters we can't ignore.
That's true. And unfortunately, the next chapter we need to explore is a difficult one, the slave trade.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic for sure.
And it's a crucial one to understand. Both the transatlantic and trans-Saharan slave trades inflicted unimaginable suffering on millions of Africans. The sheer scale of it is hard to grasp, with millions forcibly taken from their homes.
It's a truly horrifying part of history. How did this horrific trade impact African societies?
It was devastating on so many levels. Depleted populations, tore apart families and communities, destabilized entire regions. The trauma of it all echoes through generations. It's a painful reminder of the injustice that occurred.
It's heartbreaking to think about the immense loss and suffering. And I guess, sadly, this wasn't the end of Africa's struggles, was it?
No, it wasn't. As the slave trade started to decline, a new form of exploitation emerged. Colonialism.
The scramble for Africa, right, when European powers basically decided to carve up the continent amongst themselves.
Exactly. Driven by their hunger for resources and power, they drew lines on a map with little regard for existing boundaries or the people who live there. The Berlin Conference of 1884 basically made it official.
So they just sat down and decided the fate of an entire continent without even asking the people who lived there.
Pretty much, yeah. And that disregard for African agency had a lasting impact. Colonial rule brought exploitation, forced labor, suppression of local cultures and traditions.
It's like they tried to erase everything that made Africa unique.
In many ways, they did. But even in the face of all that, the desire for self-determination never died. And eventually, it led to the struggles for independence.
So the world was changing, and Africa was ready to take back control.
Exactly. After World War II, when the grip of European powers weakened, there was a wave of decolonization across the continent. Countries like Ghana, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, they led the way, paving the path for others to follow.
It must have been an incredible time of hope and optimism.
It was a chance for African nations to chart their own course. But as we know, freedom rarely comes easy.
What were some of the challenges those newly independent nations faced?
Oh, there were many. Colonialism left deep scars. Weak institutions, economic instability, ethnic tensions, and the Cold War added to the mix, with superpowers vying for influence. It was a turbulent period.
So even though the colonial flags came down, the fight wasn't over. It was the start of a new struggle to build stable, prosperous, truly independent nations.
Exactly. And while there have been some significant achievements, it's been a difficult journey. Corruption, conflict, poverty, those are still major issues in many parts of Africa.
It's a reminder that true liberation is a process, an ongoing struggle. And I guess that brings us to modern-day Africa, a continent with immense potential, but also facing some serious challenges.
That's a good way to put it. It's a place of incredible vibrancy and diversity. But there's still a long way to go.
Well, let's dive into that vibrancy. Let's explore the art, music, and environmental realities that are shaping Africa today. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Africa's past. But what about Africa today? Like, when I think of African art, I think bold colors, patterns, textures. But I'm sure there's way more to it than that, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's not just about aesthetics. There are underlying principles, philosophies at play.
Okay, like what?
Well, take fractal scaling, for example.
Fractal scaling, that sounds pretty mathy.
It is a mathematical concept, yeah. But you see it reflected in traditional African architecture.
Really?
How so?
No.
Think about those circular villages made up of circular houses. It reflects a connection to nature, a sense of harmony between individuals and the community.
Wow, that's fascinating. So even the layout of a village has deeper meaning.
Exactly. And then you've got those iconic African masks and sculptures. They're not just decorations.
Yeah, they seem to be everywhere these days.
Right. But they often serve a much deeper purpose. Masks, for example, are frequently used in rituals, ceremonies. They represent spirits, ancestors, abstract concepts.
Oh, I see. So it's like each mask is telling a story, embodying a piece of cultural history.
You got it. Their styles vary a lot, but there's often this emphasis on stylization, powerful symbolism, and we can't forget about the impact of colonialism on African art.
Ah, yeah. Colonialism tends to leave its mark on everything, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, yeah. Some traditional art forms were suppressed, others were adapted, reinterpreted under colonial influence. It's a complex mix of indigenous and European traditions.
Not always a fair exchange, though, right?
No, definitely not. Colonialism often tried to impose its own aesthetics, values, led to the marginalization of indigenous art forms. But even so, African artists found ways to resist, reclaim their heritage.
It's like art became a form of resilience, a way to hold on to your identity in the face of oppression.
Exactly. And speaking of powerful expressions, we have to talk about African music and dance, the energy, the rhythm. It's just infectious.
There's definitely something about it that pulls you in. It's hard to sit still when you hear those rhythms.
And in many traditional African societies, music and dance aren't just entertainment. They're woven into everyday life, serving social, spiritual, and cultural functions.
So it's like more than just moving your body. It's about connecting with something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And musically speaking, African music often uses these complex rhythms, polyrhythms. It creates this layered soundscape that just draws you in. It's not just one beat. It's multiple rhythms happening at the same time, interwoven.
And the dancing. It's so expressive. It's like every movement is telling a story.
Oh, absolutely. It emphasizes total body articulation, not just limbs, but the torso, head, facial expressions. It's all part of it.
It sounds like a total sensory experience. And I've always noticed how much African music and dance have influenced music globally.
Oh, huge influence. Those rhythms, melodies, they've found their way into countless genres. Jazz, blues, rock and roll, even electronic dance music. It's traveled through the diaspora, evolved over time.
It's amazing how these cultural connections weave their way through history. But speaking of global connections, We can't ignore the environmental challenges facing Africa today.
You're right. These are really pressing issues that affect not just the continent, but the whole world.
So we're talking about climate change.
Climate change is a big one, yes, but also things like deforestation, soil degradation, water scarcity. These are all becoming more and more urgent.
And I imagine these issues are especially difficult for a continent that's already facing so many other challenges.
Absolutely. Africa is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and it's all interconnected. Deforestation, for instance, leads to biodiversity loss, but also soil erosion, desertification, making it harder to grow food. And with rising temperatures and unpredictable rainfall, water becomes even more precious. It can lead to conflict, instability.
So it's not just about saving pretty landscapes, it's about protecting people's livelihoods, their very survival.
Exactly. And it's about understanding how environmental issues are tied to poverty, inequality, political
I
instability.
like that idea of polyrhythms we talked about. Everything's connected.
It is. And we have to remember that Africa has a huge role to play in fighting climate change globally. The continent is home to vast carbon sinks like rainforests and peatlands, which help regulate the planet's climate.
So protecting Africa's environment isn't just about Africa. It's about protecting all of us.
Exactly. We're all in this together. And speaking of global connections, I'm curious about Africa's economic potential. I mean, we often hear about poverty, but there must be more to the story.
Yeah, it's often portrayed as this struggling continent, but I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential there.
You're right. There's a growing recognition of Africa's economic potential. Factors like a young and growing population, urbanization, and a boom in entrepreneurship are changing the way people view the continent.
It's about time. So we need to move beyond those old narratives and see Africa as a dynamic force in the global economy.
Absolutely. Africa has a wealth of natural resources, minerals, energy, fertile land, diverse ecosystems, and there's a growing movement toward using these resources sustainably, creating jobs, fostering innovation.
It's about making sure Africa's resources benefit Africans, not just outside interests.
Exactly. It's about investing in education, infrastructure, technology to build a more equitable future.
It sounds like Africa is on the cusp of a truly transformative period. Challenges, yes, but also immense opportunity.
It really is. And it's a story that's still being written, a story that we all have a stake in.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground. Africa's past, present. It's the continent full of complexities, contradictions, It's not easy to sum up in a few words.
Mm-hmm.
But after all this, I'm curious, where does Africa go from here? What does the future hold?
That's the big question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no easy answer. Africa's future is going to be shaped by so many factors, both internal and external. How they all play out together, well, that's what will determine its trajectory.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the key things we should be paying attention to, the things that could make or break Africa's future?
Well, demographics are a huge factor. Africa has the youngest population in the world, which is exciting. Think of all that energy, potential for growth and innovation. But it also means there's a lot of pressure to create jobs, opportunities for everyone to thrive.
That's a good balancing act, right?
Yeah.
So much potential, but you need the right conditions for it to flourish. What else is on the radar?
Technology, that's another game changer. We're talking about the rapid adoption of mobile technology, the rise of digital entrepreneurs, increasing internet access. It's transforming the way people live, work, connect.
So like a digital revolution sweeping across the continent.
You could say that. And it's opening up all sorts of new possibilities for education, healthcare, even governance. Take mobile banking, for example. It's revolutionizing finance, giving millions of people access to financial services for the first time.
Wow, that's incredible. Technology really can be a powerful tool for empowerment. But what about the political landscape? We talked about the challenges of post-colonial governance. Is there hope for more stable democratic systems in Africa?
That's a tough one. There have been setbacks, ongoing struggles for sure, but there are also signs of progress. Civil society is becoming more vocal, demanding more from their leaders, accountability, transparency, and there's this growing recognition that democracy, good governance, human rights, these are all essential for sustainable development.
It's not about outsiders imposing solutions. It's about supporting African-led initiatives for positive change.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the agency and resilience of the African people. They've overcome immense challenges throughout history, and they continue to strive for a better future.
Well, after this deep dive into Africa, I'm left feeling a mix of emotions. Humbled by the continent's history, its cultures, the challenges it's facing, but also inspired by the resilience of its people and the potential that lies ahead. It's a continent that defies simple explanations, and it demands that we engage with its complexities.
Well said. It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listeners feel the same way.
I hope so too. It's been a real eye-opener for me. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought. We've explored so much: Africa's long and complex history, its diverse cultures, its present-day realities. But what do you think? What holds the key to unlocking an even brighter future for this incredible continent? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep exploring.